Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our third storyteller of the evening, GODIS.
I am 4 years old. My father is yelling and screaming, "Get that goddamn milk off the floor. Don't be so damn clumsy." I start to cry, and my insides are trembling. "Get that look off your face. Stop that crying." I wipe my tears. I am afraid of my father. My father was a drug user. He could become emotionally violent over any little thing. He was unpredictable. My mother was a weekend alcoholic. And during the week, she stayed in bed, depressed, emotionally, and physically unavailable. And I would ask her, "Mom, can I have a bowl of cereal?" And she would say, "Go ask your sister." And my 6-year-old sister became the primary caregiver for me and my younger sister. My refuge was my visions, my reoccurring visions. They were always the same. I'm sitting there watching cartoons, and all of a sudden, I'm someplace else. I'm in this beautiful white crystal temple, and these women are walking toward me, and they are walking as if they are floating, and they are illuminating light, and their skin is translucent. And when they get close to me, they just stop and they look at me. And then this warmth goes through my body when I look into their eyes. And I come out of the vision with this overwhelming feeling of love. And I say to God, with tears in my eyes, I want to go home. My parents are not loving. I want to go back to the place where the women's eyes are filled with love. At the age of 7, I stopped eating and talking and was having problems sleeping. My mother took me to a psychiatrist. On the second visit, the psychiatrist handed her a court order, and I became a ward of the court. The reason cited was failure to thrive. In the hospital, I was sad. I didn't talk, and I barely ate. One day, my doctor told me, "You can never see your mother." I became angry, and a rage grew inside of me. And I yelled, and I screamed, and I threw whatever I could get my hands on. And 2 big fat men came, and they grabbed me, and they pinned me down to the floor. And they pulled my pants down, and they took out this long, long needle and gave me a shot in my behind. And they threw me in a small room with a thin mattress on the floor. This woman named Miss Rogers came into the room, and she sat on the mattress beside me. And the sound of her voice soothed me. And when I looked into her eyes, she had eyes like the women in my vision. She had the eyes of love. And in her presence, I felt loved. She told me to lay my head on her shoulder. And she said, cry. Cry for all the hurt and the pain that you've ever felt. She gave me permission to cry. And I cried. I really, really cried. And I fell asleep. And when I woke up, Miss Rogers was gone. But my spirit felt free. And after that day, I ate, I talked, and I laughed, and I played with the other children. When I was 14, I was returned to my mother. My parents were separated. And my mother, she didn't drink as much. When I was 16, my parents got back together. And my mother had got into the church. She stopped drinking and was going to college to be a mental health counselor. And my father was no longer on drugs. My oldest sister was going to school to be a fashion designer. And she taught me how to sew. She opened me up to the creative world inside of me. And so I was able to create the garments like the women in my vision. When I was in my 20s, in my mid-20s, me and my older sister and my younger sister, who had become a hair designer, decided that we would start a women's modeling performance troupe. And we would call this troupe Total Chaos. And Total Chaos is spelled like this. The first word is total, T-O, what is it, T-A-T-O-L. And the second word is spelled capital K, accent mark, O-S. And it means to totally know oneself. And so we started recruiting models from different fashion shows and from a modeling class at the Northwest Activity Center, a full-figured model class, we recruited models. We believed we wanted to feature women of all shapes and all sizes because we believe that true beauty could only come from within, and that was our model. After we started doing the shows, I noticed that some of my models were struggling at times with maintaining a feeling of confidence on stage. And some of my models were dealing with things like domestic abuse, emotional abuse, and the fear of rejection on stage. So I needed a way to get them to tap into a more elevated vision of themselves. So I challenged them to write essays defining the beauty and power within them. I told them to be creative, that they could give that part of themselves a different name. And so they wrote these beautiful essays. For example, one of the models, her name was Yolinda, and her stage name was Compassion, because she believed the most beautiful part of her was her ability to have compassion for each other. And we had Toy, whose name was really Toya, but her stage name was Shantara. And Shantara's power was her ability to be creative. And then there's Carmen, whose stage name is Yanja. And Yanja's power is her ability to nurture. And we have Regina, whose stage name is Raven. And she believes that her power is to bring peace. And we have Shiegra, who is part lion and part woman. And she is courageous, and she is powerful, and she is regal. The mission of my models were to focus on these beautiful and powerful aspects of themselves and to bring them to life on stage. Justice prevailed, and we became one of the most respected and powerful forces in the fashion industries during the 80s. Through Total Chaos, I was able to bring the women of my vision to life. And I was able to awaken the goddess within myself and the goddess in you.